This is not just a wall, this is a borderline, a statement, a scar upon the land. For 73 miles from one sea to another, it cuts across the very neck of an island. It divided a world, Romanitas here, Barbaricum there, order from chaos, or so its builder believed. We remember Rome for its legions, its emperors, its gladiators. We remember it for conquest. But this is the legacy of an emperor who dared to say, enough. This is the work of a man who looked at the infinite bleeding edges of an empire and tried to draw a line, not with a sword, but with stone. His name was Hadrian, Publius Aelius Hadrianus, the 14th emperor of Rome. He reigned for 21 years, from 117 to 138 AD. He is called the Good Emperor, the Traveling Emperor, the Greekling. But above all, he is remembered as the Wall Builder. But why? Why, at the height of Roman power, would its leader turn from expansion to limitation? Was it genius or a fatal admission of weakness? Was he a visionary administrator or the man who planted the first seed of Rome's decline? This is the story of the most fascinating emperor you've never fully understood. A philosopher king, a restless traveler, a lover of beauty, a heartbroken man, and a military pragmatist whose greatest monument is a barrier against the unknown. This is the story of Hadrian and the walls he built, not just of stone but of ideology, culture, and grief. Hadrian did not inherit a peaceful gift. He took the throne from his cousin and guardian Trajan, a true emperor of conquest. Trajan had pushed the empire to its greatest geographical extent, crushing Dacia and plunging into Mesopotamia. But the empire was overstretched, bleeding money and men. Rebellions erupted like brushfire. Trajan, dying on a campaign in the east, is said to have named Hadrian his successor. The circumstances were murky. Was it Trajan's wish or the quick work of Trajan's powerful wife and Hadrian's allies? Rumors of a forged will swirled. Hadrian's first act as emperor was not a triumph, but a brutal consolidation. He allegedly executed 4 senior senators he saw as threats, a dark stain on his reign's beginning. And then he made his first shocking decision: retreat. He gave up Mesopotamia, Armenia, Assyria. To the old guard, the hawks in the Senate, this was humiliation. To give back hard-won land? Un-Roman. But Hadrian saw what they did not. He saw an empire defending a 10,000-mile frontier. He saw logistics, not glory. His policy was clear: consolidation, not expansion. The era of endless conquest was over. The new watchword was defensio, defense, and its symbol would be the limes. The limes wasn't just a wall, it was a system, a fortified border zone of roads, watchtowers, forts, and patrols. It was a controlled membrane, and Hadrian would tour every inch of it. For over half of his reign, Hadrian was not in Rome. He was out there. He became the first emperor to personally visit almost every province. He didn't just want reports. He wanted to see, to understand the terrain, the troops, the local gods, the mood of the people. He was a human audit. He traveled light, slept rough with the soldiers, shared their rations. He was a master of realpolitik and public relations. To the legionaries, he was Hadrian the soldier emperor, who doubled their drill and knew their names. To local elites in Greece or Asia Minor, he was Hadrian the Philhellene, the admirer of Greek culture who spoke their language and funded their temples. In Germania, he strengthened the frontier with wooden palisades. In North Africa, he coordinated desert defenses. But it was in the far northwestern corner of the world, in the perpetually damp and rebellious province of Britannia, that he saw a need for something more permanent, more symbolic. The Brigantes and other tribes to the north were a constant guerrilla thorn. The terrain was perfect for ambush. Holding the high ground with a string of forts was one thing, but building a continuous wall, That was a message carved in limestone and turf. This was his vision, Hadrian's Wall. Begun in 122 AD, it was a staggering feat of engineering, built by the very legions it was meant to garrison. The 2nd, 6th, and 20th legions, each competing to build the best sections. It was a military highway, a customs barrier, and an immense psychological symbol. For the Romans south of it, it was the edge of civilization. For the tribes to the north, it was an arrogant insult, a dam holding back their world. It regulated trade, movement, and life. It was not impenetrable, no wall ever is, but it changed the very nature of the frontier. It made the abstract idea of the border into a physical, undeniable reality. But Hadrian's genius wasn't just in the stone, it was in the system. Forts like Housesteads, Vercovicium, and Burdaswold, Banner, housed cavalry and infantry. Mile castles, every Roman mile with small gates. 2 watchtowers between each mile castle for constant surveillance. This wasn't a Maginot Line meant to stop an army. It was a filter, a controller of movement, a giant police station. It turned chaos into bureaucracy. But to define Hadrian solely by his northern wall is to miss the man. He wasn't just building barriers against something, he was building monuments for something, for beauty, for the gods, for his own restless intellect. If the wall was his pragmatism, the Pantheon was his soul. Rebuilt by Hadrian after a fire, it stands as the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome for nearly 2 millennia. It is a temple to all the gods, but also a temple to geometry, to light, to the soaring ambition of the human spirit. It represents the cosmopolitan divine order he believed Rome upheld. And then his true masterpiece of the self, Hadrian's Villa. More than a palace, it was a microcosm of the empire he traveled. He recreated the Stoa Poikile of Athens, the Canopic Canal of Egypt, the Vale of Tempe from Greece. It was a university, a museum, a retreat. Its walls enclosed the entire world as he knew it. Here, he could be the philosopher, the architect, the aesthete, surrounded by beauty, art, and poetry. But for all his walls of stone and mind, there was one force Hadrian could not control: love and loss. His wife, Sabina, was a political match, and their relationship was cold. His true companion was Antinous, a young man from Bithynia. He became the emperor's constant companion, his beloved. Then, in 130 AD, during a trip to Egypt, tragedy. Antinous drowned in the Nile. The circumstances are shrouded. An accident, a suicide, a religious sacrifice, we may never know. Hadrian was shattered. His grief was imperial in scale. He founded a city, Antinopolis, at the site of the drowning. He deified Antinous, flooding the empire with his image. More statues of Antinous survive than of almost any imperial figure. He built a wall of devotion around his memory. This personal tragedy reveals the vulnerable, passionate man behind the imperial facade. The wall builder had his own heart broken, and he tried to mend it with immortalization. Hadrian's policy of cultural unity had a dark, fatal flaw. In Judea, he tried to build a new Romanized city on the ruins of Jerusalem to be called Aelia Capitolina. He banned circumcision. To him, this was part of unifying the empire. To the Jewish people, it was cultural annihilation, a desecration. The result was the Bar Kokhba Revolt, 132–136 AD, one of the bloodiest and most brutal conflicts in Roman history. Hadrian's response was not containment, but extermination. He sent his best generals not to build a wall, but to tear down a nation. The Roman military machine crushed the revolt with unimaginable cruelty. Judea was left desolate. Hadrian had tried to erase a people's identity, and in doing so, revealed that the strongest walls are not made of stone, but of faith and will. This was the greatest failure of his unifying vision. Ill, suffering from heart failure and dropsy, Hadrian faced his final challenge, the Wall of Mortality. He needed a successor to protect his life's work. His first choice died. In a masterstroke of long-term planning, he chose the steady, prudent Antoninus Pius, but on one condition, that Antoninus adopt two young men as his heirs, Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. Hadrian wasn't just choosing an emperor, he was securing a dynasty of philosophers. His death was not peaceful. His illness made him wretched, and he begged for poison or a sword. The Senate, who never fully forgave his retreats or his autocratic style, wanted to damn his memory, damnatio memoriae. Antoninus Pius had to beg them to deify him. They relented. Hadrian joined the gods. So who was Hadrian, the wall-builder emperor? He was the ultimate pragmatist who gave us one of history's most romantic ruins. He was a consolidator who understood that infinite growth is a fantasy. He built a literal physical limit, a concept that haunts empires to this day. His walls were multifaceted. The wall in Britannia was a military and psychological frontier. The Pantheon was a wall containing divine space and light. The villa was a wall enclosing a curated world of beauty. The deification of Antinous was a wall against oblivion and grief. The crushing of Judea was the violent enforcement of a cultural wall. He showed that building walls is a fundamentally human act. We build them for safety, for definition, for memory, for exclusion. Hadrian's legacy forces us to ask, when is a wall a sign of strength and order? And when is it an admission of fear, a failure of imagination? His stone frontier in Britain stood for nearly 300 years. Then the legions left. The locals scavenged its stones for homes and churches. But the line it drew, in the landscape and in history, never fully faded. He was not a simple emperor. He was a whirlwind of contradictions, soldier and poet, traveler and home builder, unifier and destroyer. He looked at the chaotic, beautiful, terrifying diversity of an empire and tried to make sense of it, with policy, with stone, and with love. In the end, perhaps his most enduring wall is the one he built in our minds. The line he drew between the Rome of limitless conquest and the Rome of defined, defendable, and ultimately fallible greatness.